Righty, we might kick off this afternoon. So, good afternoon, and thank you so much for joining us for the fourth episode of our Amfin webinar series. For those of you I haven't met, my name is Phoebe. I'm the Sydney-based relationship manager, and I'll be facilitating today's session. I can see from the list of attendees there's a lot of our existing partners joining us today, and some new faces as well, which is good to see. We really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to log on and spend the next 30 minutes with us to learn about ABN and GST registration and the impact it can have on lender options for clients. This webinar, being a bit of a more straightforward topic, will be shorter than our other sessions to ensure you get the quick facts and to discuss options with your clients. As always, we've got our whole relationship management team online today, including Alex in Victoria, Maya in WA, and Holly in Queensland, as well as our head of growth, Tessa. As I mentioned earlier, they'll be monitoring the chat function. So please ask lots of questions and interact along the way, and we'll tackle the questions either as we go or at the end of the session. A quick overview of what we'll be covering in today's session. So to start off with, why ABN and GST registration is an important factor for commercial lending. The lending options based on the length of time a business has been ABN and GST registered for. What can be done if business continuity applies? A couple of our startup lender policies for a deep dive into what is possible. What you can do to help your client prepare as they start their own businesses or change the structure of their existing business. And we'll finish off with a few questions. I've had quite a few scenarios from brokers who have been in touch this week to discuss lending options on this topic. So if you have any live scenarios, I would absolutely love to hear from you. We'll also be using the reactions function. So I've got a couple of questions to kick us off. If you could give me a thumbs up or a hands up if you answer yes to any of the following questions. So who has self-employed clients on their book? Few thumbs up, that's good to hear. And does anyone work with any accountant referral partners? Perfect. Team, we've got some good hands up there. Good to see. Has anyone had a client inquire with them for finance if they do have a new ABN already? Perfect. And has anyone written a business cash flow deal for your client so far? Wonderful. I'm seeing lots of movement in the chat function, which is good to see. And I guess all questions that are relevant in terms of what will apply for your clients and how you can start kind of thinking about how you can support your new business clients more along the journey. So if there's one question to ask your clients who are looking at to take out finance for their business, it is, what is your ABN? Whether you do the lookup or we do, the quick search gives you visibility on how long a business has been ABN and GST registered for, which in turn will allow us to narrow down the list of lenders that will apply for your client. There are a couple of reasons that the duration of ABN and GST registration is so important, and lenders will either look at ABN and GST separately or together. The duration of ABN registration will quickly tell the lender how long the business has been active for and is a general indication of business stability. The more stable the business, the lower the risk for the lender. The business can be ABN registered though without being registered for GST. If a business is generating more than $75,000 in revenue each year, they're required by law to register for GST. Lenders will view clients that are registered for GST stronger than those that aren't because they're making a minimum amount of revenue each year and therefore, again, less risk for the lenders. In the market, there are lenders that have minimum requirements in terms of duration of ABN and GST registration. Based on what we've covered so far, a client that's had their ABN and GST registration in place is going to be stronger in the eyes of a lender than one that is not. And most commercial lenders like to see a minimum of 2 years ABN GST registration to gauge the stability of the business. There are some lenders that will look at ABN and GST registration as separate metrics, which open up the doors for clients that are in different stages of registering or growing their business. For example, some lenders will look at a minimum of 1 year ABN and GST registration, whilst others might look at 2 years ABN registration but only 1 day GST registration. So there's quite a range of combinations out there. So from the get-go, knowing your client's ABN and duration of registration will allow you to give them a quick yes or a quick no when they're inquiring with you for finance. Let's go into a little bit more detail about what commercial lender appetite looks like at the key milestones in establishing or growing a business. As a general rule, a business that has been registered with their ABN for 1 day up to about 3 months isn't really going to be able to get much in the way of commercial finance. This is where a personal loan might be a suitable gap fill solution for them. The two exceptions to this rule would be if the client is buying into a franchise where there are lenders with a specific appetite for franchises, or if the business can prove continuity, which we will go into in further detail a little bit later on. At the 3 month registration point, one lender option becomes available. However, it is still pretty limited. The finance would only be available for vehicles purchased from a dealership that are less than 5 years old. Clients would also be required to contribute a deposit, and the catch here is that the business must be 3 months ABN and GST registered. Once the business has been running for 6 months, business cash flow options become available for the client. An unsecured business loan or line of credit could be a great growth opportunity for younger businesses. So I would always keep it in mind for your clients who are looking to grow their business and your self-employed clients. All business cash flow lenders will want to see 6 months of bank statements to gauge the turnover and conduct, which is also good to flag with your client early. So anyone who didn't raise their hand for already writing a cash flow deal, this is a really good one to keep in your back pocket to help your clients. Once a business has been registered for 12 months with their ABN and GST, a number of options or a number of additional vehicle lenders become available for the clients. This is great news as it allows us to become really competitive in terms of rates for your clients. At the 12-month mark, there's also a small number of equipment lenders that come to play, and after a business has been registered for those 12 months. Jumping forward to the next big milestone, as we mentioned, 2 years of ABN and GST registration allows the lenders to gauge that a business is pretty successfully operating, generating over $75,000 in revenue a year, and the doors really do open for vehicle, equipment, and cash flow finance for business owners and clients. To recap it, if the ABN and GST has been registered for 2 years, it's a vanilla deal, and commercial lending would definitely be the best solution for your client. If it's under 2 years, then you want to warn your client that rates are likely to be higher and loan options might be limited. It isn't a bad idea to keep a consumer loan in the back of your mind if they don't qualify for a loan through their business, just so you've got solutions for them. If the ABN and GST registration is less than 3 months old for assets or 6 months for cash flow lending, and they can't wait until the 3 or 6 month mark for their loan, their options in the commercial space will be very limited unless they are going into a franchise, in which case there are some interesting specific policies for them, or they can prove business continuity. So while we're on business continuity, it's a really good time to chat about what that looks like for your clients. So a scenario that always comes across my desk sounds a lot like this. My client's changed their structure of their business from sole trader to a company and has a new ABN. Are there lender options? Based on the content we've covered so far, you might think the answer is no. However, this isn't the case if we can provide reasonable proof of business or skill continuity. There are a number of reasons that an established operation might have a young ABN. For example, when they've changed the structure from a sole trader to a company with the same director staying on throughout the change, when they've changed from a company to a trust structure, or even the joining of two smaller businesses into one larger business. For a lender to be assured that there's continuity of the operation, it's likely they'll need to see historical ABN and financial details, as well as an accountant declaration explaining the reason for the change in structure. Another scenario that comes up from time to time is where a PAYG employee, quite often a tradie, has a number of years' experience in the industry and is going out on their own, starting their business, and they need equipment to do so. In this scenario, it's pretty easy to prove that the client has established skills. However, who knows if they know how to run a business? For this reason, lenders would want to see work source letters or contracts to prove future income, as well as accountant prepared cash flow projections. Has anyone had a scenario like either of these in the past? Yeah, we've got some good reactions there. Good to hear it. I think as businesses grow, there's so many opportunities for clients to change the structures. So being able to be well armed with the information is really important. Holly, you've got a question.
Yes, I do, Phoebe. I was hoping you could help me. One of my brokers who are based on the sunny coast, they just sent through a little scenario, and I'd love, just based on this slide, to get your thoughts on it if I can.
Absolutely.
Cool. So the client has been operating a carpentry business as a sole trader since April 2019. They have recently changed to a company structure as of October this year, the 1st. He is looking to buy a vehicle now. So he's shopping around for one, most likely going to be a 2020 model. The broker just had a few questions from the client's accountant who had recommended they purchase the vehicle under the new company name.
Yeah, absolutely.
So first one was, can we at Amfin assist with it, firstly?
Yes, I dare say we
Great.
can based on the information we've provided.
Awesome. And then which institutions generally deal with this kind of deal?
So there are a couple of lenders that will look at either new ABNs or the business continuity. I'll go into 3 in detail in future, but depending on the business case and the asset being purchased, I dare say if the business turnover is strong and it's operating a really well-oiled machine, then we should have a couple of strong lender options.
I know we don't like getting asked this question, but I will ask it anyway. Do we have an indication of interest rates for this kind of deal?
Oh, good question, Holly. So rates could really be anywhere from 6% up to 26%, depending on the strength of the client, their servicing, and the application. If all lines up and it's a gold bar client, we'll hopefully get as sharp as possible, but there are factors that will impact it. So I hate to promise the best rate in the market and then the client be disappointed when the rate's a little bit higher than they were expecting.
Okay, well, last question, I promise, not as curly. What information generally do we need to provide to get the ball rolling?
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll need their old ABN, their new ABN, just so we can show continuity. And it's pretty handy that the accountant is already in touch because we'll need that accountant declaration just to justify why the company has changed its structure. And then depending on the avenue we go down with the lender, we might be able to do a low doc application, which just requires kind of their driver's license, Medicare card. Some lenders might need to also see bank statements. So we can take that offline and chat a little bit further.
Awesome. Thanks, Phoebe. Appreciate it.
No worries. Good scenario. Very timely. So as promised, moving into a couple of the startup lender policies that we work with a lot, because I thought it's always good to hear kind of what's actually happening in the market. So Volkswagen Financial Services, some of you may have heard of them, some of you may have not. They offer really sharp dealership-only rates for both consumer and commercial clients. As an offering on the whole, it's a really good point of difference for you to have for your clients. And as part of your accreditation with Amfin, you have access to Volkswagen Financial Services. Their startup policy targets young businesses with a minimum of 3 months ABN and GST registration. They have a really easy to use low doc policy for purchases up to $100,000, and a deposit of 20% is required for all purchases, regardless of property ownership status. The low doc policy doesn't mean they won't need to see bank statements or business financials, which makes things nice and easy as a finance application, a quick solution for clients. Probably no surprises here, but they do look for clients with clean credit and will also accept continuity of the business depending on the scenario. As expected though, with the 3-month ABN GST registration, the policy is slightly limited. It's only available for motor vehicles. The vehicle must be purchased from a dealership. It can't be more than 5 years old, and they specifically don't finance trucks or heavier assets. Angle is another startup lender that we frequently provide quotes for clients on. They look at ABN and GST as separate metrics. There's over 5 million ABNs in Australia that aren't registered for GST, so Angle is a really good solution, has a good niche in the market. Their Edge policy provides finance solutions for clients that are more than 2 years ABN registered, however, registered for GST for only 1 day. A client that fits within this criteria may be eligible for a low doc application up to $150,000, where the supporting documents required would just be your 3-month bank statements. Though, if the application fails in the low doc space, it can always be re-evaluated as a full doc. So it's always nice to have backups for your clients. Similar to Volkswagen with Angle Edge, a deposit is always required. However, this applies, a deposit is required, which applies to all ABNs under 2 years. A great point of difference for Angle Edge policy is that it applies for all motor vehicles and primary assets, including commercial vehicles up to 12 tonnes, yellow goods, think excavators, forklifts, loaders, civil construction equipment, also minibuses, trailers, caravans, wheeled and tracked equipment. So they've got a really good scope here. With such a broad policy available for less than 2-year GST registrations available, the rates are also loaded based on the level of risk, which could be up to 2% on the base rate. A slightly different lender for us to spotlight now. So there are a couple of lenders that will look to finance the purchase of franchises, which, as we know, is quite unique. On the whole, a new ABN is an issue, but they must also be registered for GST at the time of application. The borrow amounts are pretty limited for low doc applications, with low doc capped at $50,000, though it can go as high as $250,000 for full doc applications. The scope of what can be financed under this policy ranges from plant and equipment, fit out, as well as cash flow. So a really good kind of one-stop shop for your clients. A deposit again would always be required, with the percentage being dependent on whether the franchise that they're buying into is an accredited franchise, say a Pizza Hut or an Australia Post, or if it's a new business with industry experience. When we get further into the application with the client for franchise finance, there is plenty of additional information that will be discussed, such as the new owner's background, industry and management experience, market insights for the new venture, including target market, marketing strategy and the value proposition, a breakdown of the total turnkey costs to get the business up and running, and then financial projections, including 2 years P&L and cash flow forecasts. These scenarios are quite niche, so I would definitely recommend as soon as you get them to put them into our system, and we will be able to run with them with our finance consultants. Now, I did see a question just pop up then for Jotham. The name of the lender we work with a lot in this space is CFI. Alrighty, so next steps. How do you prepare your client if you know that they are thinking about getting finance? Perhaps they've changed the structure or they're starting their new business. So start the conversation early with your clients regarding the ABN and GST registration of their business, and have a discussion about how it could impact the options for borrowing for the business. Always ask for the ABN if you don't have it, especially if you've got a new client, or perhaps you've done a home loan for a self-employed client and they want to kind of start looking at their business finance. So you can really easily qualify if they will have any hurdles when applying for a loan. And then discuss from the beginning what financials might be required if we do end up in full doc territory. It allows them to brief in with their accountants from the get-go what they might need, so that when it comes down to crunch time, they've got all of the documentation required. We'd love you to get busy in the chat, so ask some more questions and I'll give you some time to do that now. While you are asking the questions, here's a reminder of who your dedicated relationship managers are on the screen. Please feel free to take a screenshot so you can contact them for next steps. And if anyone's not accredited, we would absolutely love to hear from you. Team, do we have any questions?
None coming through at this point, Phoebe. You clearly did a very good job. Oh, we've got one come through now. Why is GST registration required, Phoebe?
So GST registration is required for lenders because it shows that the business is earning a minimum of $75,000 a year, which therefore is slightly lower risk than a business that is not a GST registered. So it gets more efficiency in terms of rates. For an angle application, perhaps though, 2 years ABN registration and 1 day GST registration would just have slightly higher rates than if they were 2 years GST registered, because they're slightly higher risk.
We've got
Perfect.
another question in there, Phoebes. What's the criteria for interest rate comparisons for customers?
Okay, perfect. So, I mean, there's a lot of factors that will come into play when we're looking at interest rate comparisons. It'll be strength of the client, whether they're property owners, it will be their servicing, it will be their business structure and how long they've been registered for, also the type of asset they're purchasing. So I guess when we're looking at interest rate comparisons, we really want to understand the picture of the client and what's most important for them and what they're looking to achieve, and then workshop with as many lenders as possible who will take the deal. It gives them choice, and it means they know that they're getting the best deal in the market.
Yeah, and I think to sum that up, Phoebes, it probably comes down to two things. One is, what is the risk of this client defaulting on the loan, which comes to obviously a 2-year ABN GST client. It feels like they've been in business for longer, a bit more stable. And then the second part is, can I easily get my money back through property or through a new asset, versus a 15-year asset is obviously much more high risk than those new ones, which makes sense why those 3-month policies are in place for only 5-year-old assets. Oh, and then sorry, it's followed up. What's the range of the interest rate, which I think you covered off before, Phoebes, but if you just want to recap that again.
Yeah, absolutely. Rates, as we know, are on the rise. So kind of base rates for assets are starting in the sixes, kind of high sixes at the moment, but depending on all of the factors I just mentioned, it could be anywhere from 6% to 26%. We've seen it all at the moment.
And then we've got another question. Do you have lenders who do not ask for GST registration?
We do. It's pretty limited in terms of number of lenders, and the borrow amount is usually capped. The interest rate is quite high. Again, it's based on the risk profile of the client, and but we can definitely quote it up. It's not a no.
And I think given that Angle offer a 1-day GST registration, my counsel to clients would be just get registered, because your options obviously open up when you've even got that 1 day in play.
Yeah, absolutely. Perfect. Any other questions? Alrighty, well, I hope to hear from you offline if there's anything else that pops up. Our next webinar will be on the 7th of December, and the topic is definitely holidays and summer driven, leisure fields, caravan and marine finance. The further details on the webinar will be forwarded to you following this webinar and how you register, and we look forward to seeing you so much next time. Here we go, we've got another question. We answer it quickly. Do we offer any balloon repayments for any of the deals? Yes, depending on the asset again. For brand new assets, you can usually get a 30-40% balloon depending on the term of the loan. Same sort of thing with your primary assets. So depending on the lender and their threshold and the age of the asset. Perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining today. I hope the session was beneficial. It was short and sweet, and we're all looking forward to hearing from you soon.